Hello, everyone. Today we'll continue talking about Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, Book One. So far we've seen Aristotle has argued that happiness is the best good, is the thing that we all want for its own sake, and for the sake of which we want everything else that we want, right? It's distinctive in that way. We don't want it for something else. We don't want to be happy for something else. We just want to be happy, right? That we want it for its own sake. And we do other things for the sake of this being happy. We go to college to get a career because a career will make us happy, and so on. So first observation, the best good is happiness. Everyone agrees, he thinks. Second observation, and importantly, to be happy is to do well. It's an objective criteria. It's something that it's not a subjective feeling that we have, or it's not merely a subjective feeling that we have. It's correlated. It depends upon the having of objective goods. So, what is happiness? When we ask the question for Aristotle, what we're asking is, what is this good that we seek for its own sake and for the sake of which we seek everything else? That is an objective good. That having of that objective good makes our lives count as doing well. And by our lives doing well, we are happy, right? So there's objective conception of happiness that's grounded in the having of goods that are worth seeking for their own sake and for the sake of which we seek everything else. So that's what's happened so far. So what is happiness? What is this thing? Here's what Aristotle says. Concerning happiness, however, and what it is, they are in dispute. That is, people disagree. And ordinary people do not give the same answers as the wise people do. In Aristotle, he's an aristocrat, right? He thinks that it is wise people's decisions that matter, and the vulgar, the masses, the average person is either not smart enough, not trained enough. It's too busy working, so they have enough time to think about it. I mean, he has a not very flattering conception of the average person. So ordinary people, vulgar people, sometimes he calls them, they're going to be the masses that are not good guides for philosophical questions about the nature of the good life and so on. It is the wise people, those that spend time thinking about these things. So when you see those words, like, think about that. So the ordinary people think that happiness is to be had by some plain evident things, some like obvious things like pleasure, wealth, and honor. Um, Honor, and I mean, pleasure and wealth is pretty straightforward what that means. Honor for Aristotle, it's not quite what we think nowadays by honor. So sometimes we use the word honor to mean something like personal or moral integrity. Someone who has honor is someone who can be relied upon because he's good. And that's not at all what Aristotle means. To seek honor or to be honorable is to be in this social position in which people bestow praise upon you. So honor is essentially something that people give you. Is this public recognition of some good or excellence or virtue that you have. So think of when you graduate with honors, when you get a degree with honors. The with honors there is saying we as the university attest, we certify that there's something valuable that the student has, namely, higher than average performance or excellence, like intellectual performance or excellence. That's the sense that Aristotle has in mind. So people, the average person wants public recognition to be appreciated, thought well by others. And that appreciated, thought well by others is honor, right? Honor is the public recognition of you. And you can think of it roughly as fame, though fame again is not quite exactly correct. We can think of famous people. To call someone famous just as to say that they're known by a lot of people, right? Someone's famous if a lot of people know them. So it's not even popularity as such, right? Popularity is when a lot of people like them. That's popular. Famous, not even popularity, right? Someone can be famous and dislike. Everyone dislikes them, and that makes them famous. Some people say infamous to try to make a distinction there. But fame as such is just public kind of acknowledgement. People know your name. And that's not quite what Aristotle means. Aristotle means like everyone knows you, but everyone thinks well of you. You have these positions of recognition. People praise you, right? There's this thing the community bestows upon you, the honor. But it's a good thing, right? They think you're valuable in some sense. A great athlete might be bestowed some honors. A great intellectual might be bestowed some honors. So think of like winning the Nobel Prize. To win the Nobel Prize is to have this great honor, right? It's this community giving you this recognition. That is honor. But anyway, Ordinary people seek pleasure, wealth, and honor. Here's what, and Aristotle is not going to be happy with those as defined. Aristotle continues. For ordinary people, the most vulgar ones suppose happiness to be pleasure. In fact, many times people seek honor and wealth because it makes them feel pleasure, right? You want money so that you feel pleasure. You can buy things that give you pleasure. And a lot of times, many people just assume that to be happy is to have a pleasurable life. To have a pleasurable life is to have things that you enjoy, and that's it. Like that is the answer to the question, what is happiness? And here Aristotle is saying a lot of people think that most people, the bolder people, the average person, the ordinary person, think that. But Aristotle is not going to like it. He's going to give us reason for thinking that it is false. The quote continues, and that is why the life they like is the life of indulgence. If you think pleasure is what makes your life worth having, then you would naturally try to maximize the quantity of pleasure you have in your life. You will indulge in pleasurable activities, right? That's just a natural doing that which you think is correct. And then Aristotle points out something important. There are three lives that stand out. Uh, there are more than three conceptions of the good life, conceptions of the life that is worth living, but three stand out as worthy of notice. There are three that have some kind of plausibility or reasonableness to them. And one is the one just mentioned, the life of pleasure. There's something attractive. There's something not obviously mistaken. There's something like it's a real candidate to take seriously, to think that the happy life, the life worth living, is the one that is constituted by a large quantity of pleasure. The second life is the political life. And again, here it doesn't quite sound like we use the words differently, but the political life is the life that is dedicated to honor. It's the life of action. It's the life of people that are trying to bring about social justice, right? It's a good thing. It's the president who's doing their job well. It's the Supreme Court judge who's doing their job well, and that they're recognized by the community as such. So to engage in the political life is to try to bring about a good society and to play important roles in the bringing about a good society. So it's the good politician, is the good Supreme Court judge, and so on, right? So there's something very noble about the political life and the pursuing of honor. Something very good about it. Though as such, Aristotle is not going to like it, so I think that's not quite it. And third, the third kind of life, the serious candidate for the good life that stands out is the contemplative life. And here he's thinking like something like a monk, right? Someone who's dedicated to contemplation of truth, or perhaps an academic, someone who's spends their life thinking and knowing. It has in mind someone like Plato, someone who grasped the eternal forms, right? Their life is consumed by this, dedicated by the pursuit of wisdom. Um, and Aristotle is going to distinguish the one who's pursuing wisdom and then the politician, which is acting on the basis of the being wise. The politician acts, right? It's a life of action. The contemplative person is a life of thought. And Aristotle is going to have objections to them all. In his own proposal is going to kind of incorporate the best of all of these alternatives. So these are conceptions of the good life prior to Aristotle's own story, and he's going to try to bring the best of them all in, put them together in one single package. And Aristotle's going to think that's the right package, the one that has elements, the best element in all of these stories. I want to flag something. Uh, None of the three lives that stand out, the ones that are worth taking seriously, none of them is a life dedicated to wealth, right? Wealth, Aristotle mentions that, immediately dismisses it. For example, here's what he says: it's not a serious contender, thinks Aristotle. Life of a moneymaker, someone who thinks that wealth is what makes life living, and therefore that they spend their life trying to accumulate as much wealth as possible. That's the life of a moneymaker. Is in a way forced, he says. And wealth is clearly not the good we are looking for, since it is useful and for the sake of something else. That's the one sentence Aristotle gives us, and he moves on. Aristotle wrote a lot, and that's the one sentence, and he moved on. He thinks that it is obvious that the life dedicated to money making is not the good life. And he thinks that it's so obvious because those who think that are making a very simple mistake, a cognitive categorical mistake. Remember, happiness is the thing we want for its own sake and for the sake of which we want everything else, right? That's the basic distinction of happiness. And here's something crucial about money. Money is essentially the thing that we don't want for its own sake. We can't want for its own sake. Necessarily, we want for the sake of something else. Money is merely useful. There's nothing valuable in money as such. The value the money gives us is what we can buy with it. So, wealth, money, is by definition, by its essence, the kind of thing that it is merely something that is conducive to, instrumental for something else. It has no value in itself. In those that try to accumulate as much money as possible seem to make a very simple mistake. They mistake the things that are worth pursuing by themselves, like knowledge and pleasure and so on, with something that is by its very nature merely for the sake of something else, namely money. Money itself is not intrinsically valuable. It's just for the sake of something else, namely what you buy. So it's just a basic conceptual mistake to pursue a life of money making. And Aristotle dismisses it. Um, Now, you may think that this is too quick, right? Some of you may be tempted to think, okay, well, Aristotle dismisses it too quickly. Fair enough, fair enough. Money making, money itself is not intrinsically valuable, not something worth wanting for its own sake. So necessarily and only instrumentally valuable. That is something we want for the sake of something else, namely what we purchase. But hey, you may be tempted to think, but hey, the more money I have, the more I can buy whatever it is that makes me happy. So money doesn't make me happy, but the things that I can buy with it will. So regardless of what I want, I just have more money and I'll buy it. So money wouldn't make me happy, but would buy me or get me the things that make me happy, right? You may be thinking that. And here is a response to that. Thomas Aquinas gives us this response, but it seems pretty clear. Can one buy happiness? That's the objection. And the answer is, well, no. You can buy all sorts of things, but you can buy things that are for sale and things that are for sale only. And if you think about it, the things you really want, the things that ultimately make you happy, are not for sale. What are those things? Well, things like love, friendship, honor, wisdom, virtue, integrity, respect, and so on, intellectual and moral development. Um, those things you cannot buy. They're not the kinds of things that are for sale. And think of the wisdom case. You might be thinking, well, wait a minute, this is too quick as well. Surely I'm purchasing wisdom at the university. That's what I'm doing, right? I pay my tuition, then I get wisdom. Uh, but if you're thinking that, you're also not thinking correctly. You cannot buy wisdom, right? You are buying something, but what you're buying is, a chair, a position in the university. You're buying the opportunity to grow in wisdom, not wisdom. You can pay your tuition and not be wise at all, right? You can waste your time and not show up to class, not pay attention, not do your work, not care about it, right? You will get the thing you bought, namely the opportunity, but you need not get wisdom. Why? Because you're not buying wisdom. You're just buying the opportunity for growing in wisdom. And likewise for friendship and love. You might say, hey, money can get me friendship. Right? I can, tell a friend, hey, let's go to Cancun for the weekend and then I'll pay for it. And then in Cancun, we can spend a lot of time together and grow in friendship. But again, what you're buying is the trip to Cancun, not the friendship, right? That's an opportunity for growing in friendship. You can both go to Cancun and have a horrible time and not become friends at all, right? What it takes for you to grow in friendship requires something like investment and the well-being of the other, caring about what's good for them and so on. It requires things that are just not for sale. They're not the kinds of things you can buy. So happiness cannot make you happy or buy you happiness just through just conceptual mistakes here. So let's move on. So what about pleasure and honor? Two of the things that people naturally pursue that did make it into this list of the three kinds of life that stand out, says Aristotle. Well, let's begin with pleasure. Men's conception of the good or of happiness may be read in the lives they lead. And this is a very good insight by Aristotle. Many times you can ask someone, oh, what do you think about that? What do you think about that? You can try to understand their perspective through what they tell you they believe. And the more self aware or self reflective the person is, the more what they tell you would be adequate, would be accurate, right? But as Aristotle points out, that's not always the case. There's many times a mismatch between the way people look at the world, the way in which they navigate the world, the way in which they, what they do with their lives, and the story that they tell themselves about who they are. Sometimes the story that people tell themselves about who they are just does not align with what they actually do. Someone might tell you something like, I care about wisdom, I care about truth, Socrates is great, I want to imitate his example. But every single time the opportunity arises for them to like cheat in an exam, they take it. Every time like, they don't care about, right? They don't actually do things that promote truth or wisdom. They just do things to make money. Here's what Aristotle points out. If someone tells themselves a story in which they care about something, virtue and truth, but they actually behave in a different way, as if money is the only thing they care about, deep down, it is the second thing that really matters. It's what they do with their lives that settles what they truly think, in some sense of truly think, but the life that is worth living. It is your actions that define you, not the story you tell yourself about who you are. And if the story does not line up with your actions, the actions are still the ones that say the correct version of the story about who you are. And Aristotle thinks, so that's the very nice, insightful point about the story we tell ourselves about who we are and how we behave in the world. Uh, Ordinary people conceive of life to be pleasure, or if they don't conceive of it, they certainly act as though pleasure is the thing that makes your life worth living. So let's just say that they think that, even if the story they tell themselves is different. So they pursue a life of enjoyment or indulgence. And Aristotle thinks, as such, this cannot be the good life. They're mistaken. Why? Because pleasure is common with the beasts, with the lower animals. So a life dedicated to the pursuit of pleasure and pleasure alone is one that betrays or negates or undermines or even ignores the better part of humanity, our ability to know, to reason, to think, to develop personalities, and the basis of which we can act responsibly and be free and form relationships and so on. That's the cool part of humans. And if you dismiss all of that for the sake of pleasure, you're in a sense exchanging the life of a human for the life of, say, a pig or a dog or some lower animal. And you shouldn't do that, right? You're betraying the better part of yourself by doing that. A human can have a better life than that, he thinks. So the life dedicated to pleasure can be dismissed. It's not the good life. How about the second one, the political life? So sophisticated people, on the other hand, endures of actions deliberately choose honor, since it is pretty much the end of the political life. So again, the political life is the one dedicated to bring about social justice, is to bring about a good society, and so on. There's this involvement in the collective, the group, for the sake of the good of the group. And part of that, Aristotle thinks, involves the public recognition of the involvement of the person. Someone who's engaged in the political life for the sake of honor, that is for the sake of public recognition, that's the one we're talking about, right? You may engage in the public life for the sake of the good, but that would be a slightly different. So we'll talk about that later. If you're doing it only for the sake of public recognition, honor, having a standing in the community, the esteem of your fellows, citizens, fellow, group members, if that's your goal in life, then you're pursuing the life of honor, you're pursuing the political life, as defined by Aristotle. And if that's what you're doing, Aristotle thinks that's not quite correct. Right? That's not the best kind of life. That's you're missing on something. And he has two objections. So let's just define the political life as a life dedicated to honor or fame, this public recognition and glory. Um, it is not so much justice that is driving you or bringing about social justice, but rather that you live in a society in which people recognize that you're doing it, right? It's the public recognition and honor that is really driving you. That's the political life. That's defined. Here are the two objections. Objection one. However, the political life is apparently more superficial than what we are looking for. It's not the good for the sake of which we do what we do, right? Everything we do. That doesn't seem correct. Since it seems to be in the hands of the honorers, those that bestow honor, more than in the hands of the honorees, those that receive the honor. Whereas we have a hunch that the good life is something that properly belongs to us and is difficult to take away. Um, a criteria for identifying the thing that we want for its own sake and for the sake of which we do everything else is that it is something about us. It's something intrinsic to who we are. It's something that cannot just be taken away by the way people look at us and think about us. In honor is essentially the thing that people bestow upon us on the basis of what they think about us and how they see us. And it's thus not kind of located in the right place. It's not located in the agent, the person who's happy. It's located in those that think well of the agent, right? And that just, thanks Aristotle, illustrate that it's not really the best good. It's not really the thing that is something worth pursuing for its own sake. And here's the second deeper objection. Other people seem to pursue honor in order to be convinced that they are good. That is, that they have the relevant excellence or goodness or virtue. At any rate, they seek to be honored by practically wise people among people who know them and for virtue. It is clear then, according to them, at least virtue is better. In other words, people that want, let's go back to the example of honors, same degree with honors. People that want the degree with honors, they want the public recognition, right? But the public recognition of, hey, my degree says honors, and the subsequent benefits that come from that. But if they're thinking about it carefully, they want the public recognition because of their intellectual capacities or intellectual, excellence. It is not merely the recognition that they want. They want the recognition that is appropriate. That is the recognition that uh, uh, the public gives on the basis of the intellectual excellence that they do possess. So here's Aristotle's observation. Uh, that pursuing of the honor implicitly grants that it is the virtue, the excellence that is driving. It is the thing in the individual, the intrinsic intellectual excellence. It's the thing that is driving the honor when things go well. So, to the extent that we want honor, we should want honor that is appropriate, that is grounded in the virtue or excellence that the honor is bestowed upon. So, our very pursuit of honor illustrates, presupposes that the virtue or excellence upon which the honors bestow is better and prior to the honor itself. So it is that Aristotle is going to argue the excellence of the human, the virtue of the human, that is ultimately going to be the key to the happy life. And honor is just going to be something added to it. Okay, let's end here. I'll see you next time.